In our consideration this morning of Lord's Day 19, there are a few texts to which I wish to call your attention and form, at least in part, the basis for the teaching of the truth as set forth in Lord's Day 19. First passage to which I want to call your attention is in Daniel 7. This is a remarkable passage because this was a vision which Daniel saw in the old dispensation before Christ had even come. And God gave him a vision of the ascension of Christ and of the coronation of Christ, if I may call it that. That was apparently in glory, a very moving event. This is what Daniel writes in verses 13 and 14. I saw in the night visions Christ and his coming again are part of the one work of Christ which he performed, which began in Bethlehem when he was born of Mary in a cattle stall. One great work. The devil had his way in the world, so to speak. And so, when the fullness of time had come, God reached down into this sin-cursed world with his mighty hand by sending Christ, of all things born as a baby, born in a cattle stall, but the beginning of a great, great work than which there is none greater in all the history of the world, performed by our Savior in his public ministry, his death on the cross, his resurrection from the dead, his ascension into heaven, his exaltation at God's right hand, and his coming again on the clouds of heaven to bring an end to history. What a mighty work! All the world, all the creation, all creatures great and small, all that God does centers in that one great work of Christ. We consider this morning the climax of it, Christ's coronation and return at the end of time. Call your attention, therefore, to this Lord's Day under the theme, the Exaltation of Christ. Ask you to notice in the first place the fact of the exaltation. Secondly, the benefit of the exaltation. And finally, the purpose. And I consider the purpose of the exaltation to be Christ's second coming. That's what I mean by purpose. He was exalted with the purpose of coming again, a purpose which began to be realized at the moment he was taken to glory. First of all, the fact. There are two or three things I want to call to your attention in connection with the fact of Christ's exaltation. In the first place, the exaltation of Christ took place at the same time, if I may put it that way, as the ascension. Now, I'm fully aware of the fact, of course, that there is no time in heaven in the sense in which there is time here on earth. That's not a point that concerns me now. When the disciples on Mount Olivet gazed heavenward and saw the cloud take Christ into glory, in heaven, that was the moment of his exaltation. And as Daniel puts it, because we here on earth could not see that, Christ was brought to the throne of the Ancient of Days when he appeared in heaven at the time of his ascension. And there, at the throne of the Ancient of Days, Christ was given a crown and placed at God's right hand, so that he could establish the everlasting kingdom for which he had shed his blood. It was a great event in heaven. It was an event which the saints witnessed. It was an event which inspired in them a song, especially because the moment of Christ's coronation was the moment when Christ began his rule by casting Satan and all of his demons out of heaven and barring heaven forever and ever of their return or entrance into heaven. That was important for the church in heaven, important for us too, but for the church in heaven because in the old dispensation Satan had access to heaven. Think, for example, of the book of Job, where we are told that when the sons of men, that is the angels, appeared before God, at a certain time there was Satan and his devils as well. And God called Satan's attention to Job. Have you seen my servant Job? And Satan took the opportunity to slander Job and to accuse Job of serving God for selfish and personal reasons. Because, as he put it, no wonder Job serves you. You give him wealth, you give him money, you give him huge herds and flocks. It pays for Job to serve you. And so God tried Job in a terrible way to show Satan that what Satan said was not true. Satan slandered the people of God. All the saints that were there. It was a miserable business. You mustn't think of heaven as being such a nice place in the Old Testament. Of course, it was better than this earth. But it wasn't all that great. Satan came and he accused the saints that were there. Revelation 12 says as much. The accuser of the brethren is cast down. And his accusation was, these people don't belong here. They have no right to be here. They're all sinners. They're the worst of the sinners on the face of the earth. What business do they have being in heaven and in the glory of heaven? And Michael, who fought against the devils, as Revelation 12 makes clear, told Satan and his hosts, the Lord rebuke thee. The Lord will send Christ, and Christ will be the one who makes it possible for them to inherit heaven. They are here by the power of the promise of God. And Satan mocked that promise. And Revelation 12 tells us that his bitter invective against Michael was this: I'll see to it that Christ never comes. I'll devour that child. And the history of the old dispensation is a history of Satan's efforts to prevent Christ from being born. So you can imagine when Satan and his hosts were cast out in glory, that the church rejoiced with the greatest possible rejoicing, for Satan and his hosts were cast out.